and welcome today to our webinar that is being put on by Rittal, Modularity, Flexibility, and Scalability, How Enclosures Are Changing Industrial Automation. We're just going to give a minute or two for a few other attendees to jump in, but I just want to say thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar. We will be recording the webinar and sharing the recording with everyone after, so you will receive a copy of it in a follow-up. So we hope that you share it with your friends afterwards, and hopefully we can expand and make sure that the wonderful information that Beth will be providing today will get out to as many people as possible. In today's webinar, we're going to be learning about how to leverage bayable enclosures and a range of available mounting options to maximize your space, how going modular can save you time and money in areas you wouldn't expect, why frame style is so important, and the truth behind common misconceptions about modular enclosures. We have with us today Beth Leonard, who is our presenter. Beth is a system consultant at Rittal, and she's been with Rittal now for 7 years and has had a number of roles while there, both across sales, application engineering, tech support, and product management. You know, she really loves working with Rittal and enjoys the daily interaction with the end users and the opportunity to bring a solution-minded approach to complex industrial challenges. And I think one of the things that is going to be really exciting is that Beth is going to use examples and talk today about some of the unique applications that she has worked on to help solve real-world customer challenges. And I think that's going to be one of the most important things is that Beth can bring to the table a lot of that real-world experience with the clients. So please, by all means, throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, or you can fill those out in the dashboard on your right-hand side in the questions or in the chat field. Feel free to use either of those to write in your questions. And at the end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A period where we will ask Beth your questions. If by chance we get a lot of questions and we aren't able to get to your question, feel rest assured that we will follow up with you by email and be sure that you get a response to your question. At that point in time, I am going to pass it off to Beth Leonard to begin to teach you a little bit more about how enclosures are changing industrial automation. Thank you very much, and over to you, Beth.
Well, thank you, Owen, and thank you everyone for joining today. As Owen mentioned, my name is Beth Leonard, and I am a system consultant at Rittal North America. Sorry, there it goes. Okay. This is summarizing again just the highlights that Owen had said that this is going to be our agenda today. Hopefully I'll point across the common challenges, kind of highlight what is a modular enclosure, some of the benefits of choosing a modular enclosure, misconceptions that I hear quite often about modular enclosures, considerations you should think of when you're designing in enclosures, kind of looking at a true cost of what it takes to use enclosures as a whole. And as Owen mentioned, at the end, I will go through some sample applications that I worked on with other customers. Most designers have switched to current technology in PLCs, starters, drives, etc. Yet they often package these products in 1940s and 50s enclosure designs. Many are tied to specs that have not changed in years and may be unaware of improvements in enclosure designs. Many common challenges could easily be solved by transition to a modular enclosure. These are some of the common challenges I see working with designers and end users when an enclosure is needed, such as getting stuck with the wrong size enclosure. Too often, if electrical engineers and the mechanical engineers are not on the same page, the wrong size enclosure will be ordered. If it's a unibody, you're either stuck or you have to buy a whole new enclosure. With modular, you can expand the enclosure system to fit the need. Wasted money. With a unibody enclosure, if a mistake is made with a hole or cutout, you have to replace the whole enclosure. With modular, you can simply replace the door, the walls, or the roof. Wasted time. When only one person can be working on the enclosure at a time, valuable time is wasted. With modular enclosures, one person can be working on cutouts while another works on the mounting panels. Transportation issues. Large unibody enclosure systems are difficult to ship. With Modular, you can ship it in pieces and put together on site. Limited space. Whether you're dealing with your own real estate constraints or you're building for a customer who has given you a footprint puzzle to solve, Modular gives you more planes and mounting options to work with. Supply chain issues. More than ever before, purchasers are asking about where the enclosures are made, whether they're available off the shelf, the availability of steel, and whether their partners have been proactive about preventing supply chain delays. Planning for expansion. Companies that are actively growing or want to need industrial automation systems that can grow with them. To highlight again, several of these challenges mentioned cannot be solved using a unibody enclosure. With welded walls and roof, you are limited to the options available to you. Today, we will be looking at all the benefits that modular enclosure systems can offer, including multiple mounting options of components, more flexibility in incorporating job changes, less need for customization by using off-the-shelf accessories. So what is a modular enclosure? A modular enclosure uses a frame-based design. Because of this, all the skins or walls and roof are removable. Also, the door can be rotated due to the preference at the installation site. Being able to remove the sidewalls, expansion of the enclosure system can be done easily. Enclosures of the same height and depth can be paid together for a larger enclosure system. A continuous mounting panel would be possible with the addition of infill panels. If you had to do this with a unibody enclosure, a complete second enclosure would be needed. This could take up more floor space. Also, extra modifications would be needed if something had to be connected from the first unibody. With the frame, mounting provisions are included into the design. With off-the-shelf accessories like system chassis, the designer can use multiple planes within the enclosure. This could actually enable the designer to use a smaller enclosure. These are common misconceptions that I hear quite often when I'm working with panel shops or end users about modular enclosures. One of the main ones that I hear a lot is that modular systems are just not strong enough because they use a thinner gauge steel. Well, with modular enclosures, all the weight is being held by the frame. And because of the frame, it can hold up to 3,200 pounds. I also hear often modular systems are more expensive. They're looking at the true cost, they actually are more cost competitive and flexible than a unibody enclosure. Modular systems require a lot of assembly work. I don't know how many times I've actually heard someone call it an erector set. But nowadays for a modular enclosure, it comes with the roof, the door, and the base. All you actually need to do is install the sidewalls. Lastly, I hear often that you have to order a bunch of part numbers. Again, a modular enclosure only needs 2 part numbers, the sidewalls and the enclosure itself. For with our enclosures, the mounting panel is included. Typically with a unibody enclosure, the mounting panel is not included, so you also have to order 2 part numbers. When I'm working with a designer on a new project, these are the questions I ask to offer the best solution. What is the application? What environment is the enclosure going into? Do you have any space restrictions outside the enclosure? What are the temperature conditions inside and outside of the enclosure? Does the user interface with the enclosure, such as an HMI? What is the material of construction? Are aesthetics important? How will cable be brought into and managed in the enclosure? How important is service? And what are the internal design requirements of the enclosure? What's being installed in the enclosure? This, of course, is the most obvious question. Why else would you be looking at an enclosure if there wasn't components that needed to be protected? But what other questions can be asked? I know what will be in the enclosure today, but do I need room for expansion? Perhaps a larger drive down the line. How much panel space do I need? Am I limited to the mounting panel, or can I mount components on the door or along the depth? How will the cables and wires be laid out? What accessories could I use to help keep them organized? For certain end users, floor space is a premium. In this example, a unibody that is 72 inches high and 24 inches wide, the mounting panel is only 60 by 20. In a modular enclosure that is 72 inches high and 24 inches wide, the mounting panel is 67 inches high and 20 wide. Having more mounting panel space may enable you to use a smaller enclosure or have extra room for expansion. Another thing to consider is, where will this enclosure sit in the factory? Could it be confined by a post or a wall that would make the door hard to open? With a modular enclosure, the door is reversible. Hinges can be on the left or the right. How about the door opening to get the enclosure to its final position? What do you do if the door is only 30 inches wide and your enclosure system was 48 inches wide and 32 inches deep? With a modular enclosure, you could split the system in two and reassemble. What about all the costs associated with populating an enclosure? The extra things that go beyond the price of the enclosure itself, the things that could make your life easier. The next few slides, I hope to highlight the advantages of using a modular enclosure and how they can actually save you on the true cost. Here are some questions I would like you to think about in regards to making cutouts or modifications to your enclosure. How easy is it to do those cutouts? Is there enough room around your enclosure for the installer to work? How do I ensure that the equipment is protected during installation? Here are some more points I'd like for you to consider while adding cutouts. Have you thought about, when you're using a unibody, how you're actually making the cutout? The enclosure is actually standing, or you have to lay it on its back. This could cause problems that you'd need a crane or forklift to move the enclosure around your space. How about the shavings that could actually go into the box? It might actually require extra cleaning. And then what if you did do that cutout wrong? You have to spend extra time and money welding it over. Also, it's hard for multiple people to work in the enclosure at the same time when someone's doing cutouts. And lastly, when you're cutting into that 10 and 12 gauge steel, have you ever thought about how hard it is on your tools? With a modular system, the cutting can actually be done on a workbench. So you have no issues of cleaning and having shavings falling into your electrical components. If there is an error that's made in the door or the sidewall while cutting, there is a possibility that you can just replace the whole thing and not have to weld over the mistake. Modular enclosures do use a lighter steel gauge, and that is easier on your tools. And one of the nice things too is that one person can be doing cutouts while someone else is actually working inside the enclosure. How much space do you have on your assembly floor? The panel shops I've been to recently are busier than ever. More projects are coming in, and workspace is a premium. What if you could remove the doors and actually get the enclosures closer to each other? Have you thought about what it's like to actually remove the door? I've been told that it could take to 30 to 45 minutes to get the door off a welded unibody, so most people just leave it on. With a modular door, it is secure by hinges that can be removed with a flat blade screwdriver. How easy is it to get the mounting panel in and out of the unibody? What do you do if you don't want the mounting panel in the rear, you want it closer to the door? With a modular enclosure, the mounting panel is on a mounting bracket that enables it to slide in and out for ease of use. The frame design of a modular enclosure also enables the mounting panel to be secured anywhere along the depths. Are you using painted mounting panels? How do you ground those? Typically, the paint needs to be scratched off for contact. This still looks messy even with the touch-up paint. Modular enclosures come with zinc-plated mounting panels. Grounding is done directly and is still corrosion resistant. What is your true cost on shipping enclosure systems? Is there a truck long enough to ship it in one piece? Is there a large enough crane to move it on and off when it's fully populated? Modular enclosures use smaller gauge steel. This means it's lighter and could make it easier to move around. Lastly, what happens when there is a design change? A drive is needed that is larger than expected. The PLC is out of stock and what's available takes up more room. With a unibody, a larger enclosure would need to be ordered. Is there room for that? With modular, perhaps partial mounting panels can be used on different planes. What about system chassis along the deck? Off-the-shelf accessories could be used with the current setup. This is an example that modular enclosures can also be made with stainless steel. With the use of a suite kit, NEMA 4X is maintained. In this situation, the enclosures were populated and tested at a different site. When it was time to move to its final destination, a shipping brake was used. This is an example of our power isolation solution. The main power is mounted in a 16-inch enclosure on the far right. Using a divider wall, it is separated from the rest of the enclosure system. This can be padlocked so no one can get into this cabinet. It can be set up so all enclosures are interlocked, or the far left enclosure can be non-interlocked. This is an example of using partial doors to create separate buckets or separate areas. In this application, the customer used 19-inch rails on the bottom portion to mount servers and industrial equipment on top. They chose a door with a viewing window to monitor the equipment inside. This customer chose to use a full-size mounting panel. However, partial mounting panels are available, so it can be moved forward in the cabinet. This is an example of a 3-based system using 2 standard enclosures and 1 disconnect enclosure. With the use of mounting panel infill pieces over the frames, the customer was able to have 1 continuous mounting surface. This is an example of putting doors on front and back. This customer was able to use 2 separate mounting panels back to back to increase the mounting area. You can see that in the picture on the far right, the cables were routed in such a way that both sides are connected. This is an example of using 2 enclosures. The one on the left is for 19-inch rack mountable equipment. The one on the right is a traditional industrial cabinet. They also decided to put doors on the front and back. You can see in the picture on the far right, they removed the mounting panel for better access to the server equipment. The second picture to the right shows system chassis are used to organize cable routing. It also shows 2 mounting panels back to back for more mounting space. To summarize our discussion today, we see a trouble-free future going forward with modular enclosures. They offer the flexibility and scalability that the ever-changing industrial automation market demands. And here's some information. This website here, we offer a configuration system that to help you with your design, and our phone number and email address is there too. Owen, was there any questions?
Hi. Yeah, thanks for that fantastic overview, Beth. That was really informative. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions that have come in. One I am just awaiting an answer on for Marius, but we will move on to a few others that are a little direct and you can respond to. There seems to be a lot of accessories to choose from. So we have a question about how would one know which is best for their application?
Yes, Rittal has several system consultants around the US that are here to support the customer. Just going over some of those design consideration questions with one of my teammates, we can help you select what are the best accessories for your application and kind of take the guesswork out of it for you.
Oh, very, very good. Thank you for explaining that. Another one here, people are talking, they're sort of mentioning that plant floors are really, really busy today and busier than ever, and don't always have time to, fully assemble their modular enclosures. So what options do they have to them that you guys can support with that?
Oh, sure. Yep. Rittal has a program called Prime Express, where we would actually assemble the enclosure for you and or add modifications such as cutouts for HMI, push buttons, fans, etc. Rittal has a service that can do that. We also have several platinum modification distributors around the US that also offer that type of service. So yes, if it turns out that you're just, good for you, too busy, very exciting times, we do have to help you take some of that burden off your shoulders.
That's great. I think we're all looking to get a little bit of time back today. Yeah, every day, everyone's so busy, especially as we're coming out of things. Another question here. I heard modular enclosures are only rated NEMA 12. Is that correct?
The most common ones are NEMA 12. However, we do offer NEMA 3R and 4, and then in the example I showed, we did show the stainless steel NEMA 4X versions. For baying those together, we offer what we call a suite kit, and using that suite kit keeps the NEMA 4X rating.
Very good. Thank you. Another one here. So in many of the pictures and things that I see, it looks like the enclosures often sit directly on the floor. But if someone needs to have cables enter from the bottom, what would be, how would they accomplish that, and what would be the best way for them to approach it?
Sure. We offer plinths that can be used underneath the enclosures. We offer them in 4 inches or 8 inches. And then we do also offer the standard 12-inch floor stand kits that are popular. So we have several different options, and it just gets down to preference on how much space you need underneath for that. But we do have options to raise the enclosure off the floor.
Oh, perfect. So another person here, and I know you kind of touched on this, but I think they'd like you to maybe go into a little bit more detail about them mounting their components directly to the skins and sidewalls. And again, you talked a little bit about how they do appear a bit thinner, and they are thinner, but and the capacity for weight, but just looking for again a little more assurance on how to mount onto those lighter walls and what options are available to them in terms of mounting onto the skins and sidewalls.
Oh, sure. Yep. The skins, the door and the sidewalls can hold up to 200 pounds, which is typical for like an industrial AC. The ones that are using like the heavier duty VFDs and need to mount those on the walls. We do kind of offer like a ceiling frame kit, so that then the drive is actually still mounted on the mounting panel and is the weight is still secured by the frame. But then with this kit, it seals the back of it, so it still maintains the NEMA 12 rating. Another option is to use different system chassis or system rails that will help support the walls that hold extra weight also. So depending on the application, we do have a couple different options that we can explore.
Interesting. And just sort of actually following up on that question, for someone who has, been working perhaps with Rittal's enclosures for a while, but not specifically the modular, if they're considering getting a newer enclosure or putting newer enclosures in and are unsure about going with the traditional models that they have used or potentially going to the modular, what ways does Rittal or can you guys work with them to ensure or let them know what would be the best option in that specific application?
Yep. Again, probably working with the system consultants. They can either look at if you have a current enclosure, we could come look at it, or we could do a Zoom and talk about it, and then we can decide what's the best way to go forward. Typically, if it's a TS8 enclosure, it'll be fairly easy to expand your system with the same enclosure or even a different width, depending on what your needs are. So we're able to support you in that way.
Fantastic. Sounds like a lot of support all around.
Yes.
Those are actually the end of the questions that we've had put in for you today. So I don't know if you would like to expand on anything else that you have prepared, or otherwise we are at the end of our questions.
Oh, okay. No, just again, I thank everyone for their time today. I know time is precious and that we're all busy, so for you to take 30 minutes out of your day to listen to me speak, I do appreciate it. Again, usually when I'm meeting a customer, I tell them that my job is to make their job easier, and I feel that my teammates are the same way. If there's anything that we could do for you to help you select what product would be best for your application, or even if you already know what the product that you want, as you have said, Rittal offers a lot of accessories. So sometimes there's some accessories out there that might make your life a little bit easier that we can recommend. So please do not hesitate to reach out, and we're here to support you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Beth, and for all that. And certainly Rittal is there to support. And I think everyone will agree with me that taking that time today to listen and learn about that from you was well worth the time and highly valuable to everyone. So thank you very much for putting on such a great presentation.